What happens when a woman who thinks every question is beneath her sits opposite a woman whose entire career is built on asking exactly those questions? What happens when Meghan Markle walks onto a stage expecting adoration and finds Wendy Williams instead, smiling, patient, and absolutely unwilling to back down? By the time this interview is over, one of them will be standing, the other will be storming off set, and millions of viewers will finally see what happens when entitlement meets a woman who's made a living calling people out. The purple chair had seen a lot: celebrity meltdowns, surprise confessions, awkward denials, but even the crew could feel this one was different. The Wendy Williams Show studio buzzed with energy. The audience had already been warmed up. The applause signs were flashing, and the band's intro faded as Wendy slid into her seat, hair laid, eyes bright with that familiar mix of curiosity and mischief. She turned to the camera, lips stretching into that signature smile. "Okay," Wendy purred, drawing the word out. "Our next guest, you know her, you have an opinion about her. Everybody does. Actress, duchess, podcast queen, book writer, California girl. Please welcome Meghan Markle." The audience broke into loud applause mixed with a low undercurrent of murmurs. Some people stood, some clapped hesitantly, some just stared, fascinated. Meghan stepped out from behind the curtain in navy dress and heels that clicked like a metronome across the stage. Her hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, makeup flawless, jaw set with polished confidence. She waved briefly at the crowd, not the warm, enthusiastic wave of someone truly happy to be there, but a small, tight gesture that said, "Let's get this over with." Wendy stood to greet her, arms open. "Meghan," she said brightly. "Welcome, welcome." Meghan gave her a quick hug that was more choreography than affection, and sank delicately into the guest chair. "Hi, Wendy," she replied, the smile on her face not quite reaching her eyes. It's interesting to be here." Wendy's eyebrow ticked up almost imperceptibly. Interesting. Not great, not fun, not exciting, just interesting. "Have a seat," Wendy said, reclaiming her purple throne. "So, Meghan Markle is in the building, everybody." The crowd applauded again on cue. "How you doing?" Meghan's smile tightened. "I'm fine, thank you," she said, the answer clipped. "Busy as always, a lot going on." "Oh, we know," Wendy replied lightly, leaning in, elbows resting on her knees. "We talk about you a lot here." She glanced at the audience. "Don't we?" A ripple of laughter moved through the seats. Meghan's eyes flicked to the crowd, then back to Wendy. "Yes, I've noticed," she said coolly. "It seems like everyone has something to say about my life." "That's because you live a very public life," Wendy said, choosing her words with care. "You married into one of the most famous families on earth. Left that family, did interviews, podcasts, books, documentaries. People are curious. That's what we do here. We talk about the people everyone's curious about." Meghan shrugged, crossing one leg over the other. "Curiosity is one thing," she said. "Obsession is another." The audience let out a low, "Ooh." Wendy chuckled, unbothered. "Fair enough," she said. "We'll get to all of that. But first, how's life in America treating you? Meghan Markle back on home turf. How's the California sunshine?" Meghan leaned back, fingers lacing neatly in her lap. "America is tolerable," she replied. "At least here, people pretend they care about individuality. There's more freedom, less bowing." The last word dripped with disdain. Wendy smiled, but there was a sharp glint in her eyes now. "Tolerable," she repeated. Not exactly a glowing Yelp review. There was laughter from the audience. Meghan tilted her chin slightly. "I'm not here to sugarcoat things," she said. "People get enough fairy tales. I'm just trying to live my truth in a place that doesn't understand what that really means." "Okay," Wendy said, nodding slowly. "So, California is tolerable. Let's talk about the man who made you a duchess. How's Harry?" A few members of the crowd leaned forward, anticipating. Meghan's expression hardened just a little. "Harry is fine," she said. "He's exactly where he needs to be, away from all of that." "All of that being?" Wendy let the question hang. "An institution that treats people as symbols rather than humans," Meghan replied, voice crisp. "He's recovering from a lifetime of being used. We're both recovering." Wendy hummed, but But now you have Netflix deals, a book, interviews, a big California house. That's a different kind of spotlight. Some people would say you left one stage and built your own. Meghan's smile thinned. That's called survival, she countered. We had to create our own opportunities when we were cut off. It's fascinating how people never question those who inherit wealth and privilege. But the second we decide to work, it's a problem. The audience reacted, some clapping, others exchanging glances. Wendy watched her guest carefully. Look, Wendy said, you're not the first celebrity to say, I'm just surviving while living in a mansion. My audience is smart. They see both sides. That's why I'm asking. She held Meghan's gaze. Do you see how some folks might think your struggle looks a little different from theirs? Meghan sighed, the sound heavy with irritation. With respect, Wendy, I think people are smart enough to understand nuance. At least I hope so. Struggle is not a competition. Just because I had a title doesn't mean I didn't suffer. Struggle isn't a competition, Wendy echoed. True, but perception is real. And the perception a lot of people have is that you talk a lot about your pain while living a life many would kill for. There was another wave of murmurs from the audience, a few nods, a few crossed arms. Meghan's eyes flashed. So, I'm not allowed to speak about my experiences because other people have it worse? She asked, voice edged with sarcasm. Is that the rule now? Silence if you're not at the bottom? Wendy lifted her hands, palms out. I didn't say that, she replied calmly. I'm not telling you to be quiet. I'm asking if you understand why some people roll their eyes when a duchess talks about suffering. There's a difference. Meghan leaned forward slightly, her tone cooling into something almost icy. With all due respect, Wendy, she said, what I understand is that people love to decide how much pain someone is allowed to feel, and most of those people weren't there. A line of tension appeared at the corner of Wendy's mouth, but her voice stayed even. Let's talk about someone who was there, she said. Harry, we see the headlines, we see the photos, we see him at the polo matches, the events, the interviews. Is he happy in this new life? Truly happy? Or is he just playing along? Meghan's jaw tightened. Harry isn't playing along, she said, each word clipped. He made a choice, an adult choice. He left something toxic and built something better. I know that's hard for people who are attached to the fantasy of a little boy in a uniform walking behind a coffin, but he's not that child anymore. The studio fell silent at the blunt reference to Harry's childhood trauma. Wendy inhaled slowly. All right, she said. You brought up the fantasy. Let's lean into that. People watched you walk down the aisle, watched the fairy tale wedding, and then watched it fall apart. You've told your side many times. Do you think there's any part of this story where you could have done things differently? Meghan's laugh was soft, humorless. That's adorable, she said. The idea that if I had smiled more or bowed lower, centuries of embedded power structures would have magically shifted. No, Wendy, I did what I could. The rest is on them. A few scattered wows rippled through the audience. Wendy nodded slowly, but there was a new firmness in her gaze. So, there's nothing you would change? She pressed. No words, no interviews, no choices, nothing you'd do differently? Meghan crossed her arms, the gesture controlled but defensive. The only thing I would change, she said, is trusting people who didn't deserve it. Beyond that, no, I won't sit here and perform regret to make strangers more comfortable. This time, the audience didn't quite know how to react. Some clapped uncertainly, others stayed silent. The energy in the room shifted from curiosity to something more prickly. Wendy sensed it, felt it in the way the front row leaned back instead of forward. All right, she said slowly, let's step into lighter territory for a moment. Your children. People love seeing them, hearing about them. How is mom life in California? Are they little royals or little Californians? A gentler question, a crowd pleaser, but Meghan's expression didn't soften. My children are not content for public consumption, she said briskly. They're not little anything for people to label. They're just kids. And honestly, I get tired of this obsession with them, as though they belong to anyone but us. Wendy blinked. I didn't say they belong to anyone else, she replied. I asked how they were. That's a pretty normal question for a talk show. Well, maybe normal isn't good enough anymore, Meghan shot back. Maybe we should stop normalizing the idea that people are entitled to the private lives of children just because they've seen their parents on TV. There was a low murmur again, this time edged with discomfort. Wendy's smile thinned. Meghan, you've shown them in documentaries, mentioned them in interviews, dedicated projects to them. People feel like they know them because you brought them into the public conversation. Meghan's eyes sharpened. That's called storytelling, she said. It's not an invitation for the world to pry. There's a difference, a big one. Wendy sat back, breathing in slowly through her nose. She could feel it now. This wasn't going to be one of those cute surface-level interviews that ended with a hug and a meme. The audience could feel it too. Okay, Wendy said at last, voice calm but cooler. Since we're talking about the public and perception, let's address something head-on. The tabloids, the blogs, the podcasts, the Meghan fatigue headlines. You know they're out there. People saying they're tired of hearing your story, tired of the royal drama. What do you say to them? Meghan gave a small, almost mocking smile. I say they're free to change the channel, she replied. No one is forcing them to watch or read or listen. If they're tired, they can rest, but they don't get to complain about a story they keep choosing to consume. Some in the audience actually clapped at that. Others didn't move at all. Wendy's gaze stayed locked on Meghan. Do you ever worry, she asked quietly, that one day they will change the channel, and they won't change it back? For the first time, a flicker of something passed across Meghan's face. Annoyance, maybe, or the faintest hint of doubt. It vanished almost instantly. No, she said, because people will always be interested in the truth, and I'm one of the few people willing to tell it. The words hung in the air, heavier than any applause. Wendy looked at her guest for a long moment, her fingers tapping lightly on the arm of her chair. The audience watched, sensing a line being drawn, even if they couldn't yet see where the explosion would come. Okay, Wendy said finally. Her smile returned, but it didn't quite reach her eyes either. We have a lot more to unpack. The royal family, Hollywood, rumors, and what Meghan says people still get wrong about her. She turned to the camera. Stay right there, she said, because when we come back, we're going to ask the questions everybody has been too scared or too polite to ask. The band swelled as they cut to commercial, but the tension in the studio didn't move at all. Meghan stared straight ahead, jaw tight. Wendy flipped through her blue cards, lips pressed together. Round one was over. No one was sure yet who was winning. But everyone knew one thing. This was about to get ugly. The band faded out, the applause sign flashed again, and the audience clapped on cue. But underneath the noise was that same electric unease. They weren't just watching an interview anymore. They were watching a fuse burn. Wendy turned back in her chair, cards in hand, smile firmly in place. We're back, she said smoothly. We're here with Meghan Markle, Duchess, Mom, media mogul, depends who you ask. A few laughs. Meghan didn't join them. So, Wendy continued, shifting slightly forward, let's talk. Meghan exhaled through her nose, readjusting the cuff of her blouse as if she'd been waiting for the real questions to start. Isn't that what we've been doing? She asked. Wendy ignored the jab with a practiced grin. You know me, Meghan. We do hot topics here. We talk about the things that come up at dinner tables, in group chats, in the comments section at 2 a.m. She shuffled her cards and looked up. And you know what comes up a lot? Meghan stared at her. I'm sure you're going to tell me. You, Wendy replied simply. And not just the fairy tale wedding, not just Suits reruns. She paused for effect. The drama, the audience murmured. Meghan gave a tight little laugh. Of course, she said dryly. God forbid people show interest in my work when they can obsess over my trauma instead. Wendy nodded slowly. All right, let's start with something simple. We've seen a lot of headlines lately about tension between you and certain members of the royal family. Leaked sources, palace insiders, all that mess. You've said your piece in the past. But if you had to describe your relationship with them today, in one word, what would it be? Meghan didn't hesitate. Non-existent, she said. The audience reacted immediately. Gasps, hushed whispers, a sharp intake of collective breath. Non-existent, Wendy repeated. Not strained, not complicated, not working. On it, just non-existent? Meghan shrugged, almost bored. I prefer to be accurate, she replied. We're not texting, we're not calling, we're not doing Zoom tea parties. They live in their world, I live in mine. Do you feel any sadness about that? Wendy pressed. Any regret? Meghan's eyes flicked to her, cold now. Sadness is a luxury you get when people actually tried, she said. I'm not going to pretend to mourn relationships that were conditional at best. A low, ooh, rolled across the audience. Wendy's expression stayed neutral, though her voice carried more edge now. A lot of viewers, she said, look at your story and see a family that was publicly called out on a global stage. They see interviews, docu-series, a book, and some of them say, she didn't just close the door, she set the house on fire on her way out. Do you understand that view? Meghan tilted her head, smile icy. If telling the truth feels like arson to them, she replied, maybe they shouldn't have built the house out of lies. The crowd erupted at that. Some clapped, some gasped, some shook their heads. Wendy let them react, then raised a hand to quiet them. Her eyes never left Meghan's. All right, she said. Speaking of houses, let's talk Hollywood. A few people in the front row leaned in. They knew what that meant. You were an actress before all this, Wendy continued. You walked away from that. Then you became royalty. Then you walked away from that. Now there are rumors, and you know I read everything, that you're stepping back into the Hollywood spotlight. New projects, new scripted shows, maybe even a return to acting. Is that true? Meghan smirked. It's adorable how people think I need their permission to evolve, she said. I don't confirm or deny rumors. That's free promo for people who didn't do the work. But you have been shopping projects? Wendy countered, unapologetic. You've been in meetings. People talk. Hollywood is small. Are you returning to acting or not? Meghan paused just long enough to seem calculating. I'm returning to myself, she said finally. Whatever form that takes is my choice. If I do a scripted project, it's because it has meaning, not because I'm desperate to cling to relevance, despite what some pundits want to believe. There it was again, that sharp little dig at everyone who dared question her. Relevance, Wendy repeated. Do you feel like you're struggling to keep it? Meghan's eyes narrowed, the smile dropping completely now. No, she said. I feel like people are struggling to accept that I'll never fit the version of me they created in their heads. Wendy inhaled slowly. Okay, she said. Since we're talking about versions, let's get into something people really discuss. She lifted one of the cards and glanced down at it briefly, though she already knew what she was about to say. There's this narrative out there that you insist you left the royal family for peace and privacy. But then you did Oprah, Netflix, Spotify, magazine covers, interviews like this one. She looked up. People say that doesn't match, that you left one spotlight and built another, brighter one, on your own terms. Meghan's jaw flexed, teeth pressing together before she answered. I'm so tired of that lazy talking point, she snapped. Privacy doesn't mean disappearing into a cave. It means having agency. It means choosing what you share and what you protect. If people can't grasp that, that's not my intellectual problem to solve. There was a sharpness to the phrase intellectual problem that landed like an insult. Wendy's eyes flickered. The audience reacted again, this time with more discomfort than amusement. So, Wendy said slowly, when people say they're confused by your actions, when they say the story keeps changing, your answer is that they're just not smart enough to get it? Yes, Meghan replied bluntly. Because they're the same people who consume hours of content about me and then complain that I'm overexposed. They want access and silence at the same time. It's hypocrisy. Wendy's lips pressed into a thin line. For a moment, her usual playfulness vanished. I've been doing this a long time, Meghan, she said quietly. I've seen a lot of celebrities sit in that chair. Some were adored, some were hated. But the ones who lasted understood something. You can't talk at people forever and expect them to stay on your side. Meghan's gaze sharpened, a warning. Is this where you lecture me? She asked. Because I didn't come here to be scolded by daytime TV. The audience reacted instantly. Gasps, a few scattered claps from people who clearly enjoyed the tension, others shaking their heads. Wendy's eyes widened just a fraction. Daytime TV pays a lot of people's bills, she said evenly. And the audience you're dismissing? They're the same people who bought your book, streamed your show, watched your wedding at 5 a.m. in pajamas. They're not props. Meghan's lips curved into a cold smile. They're spectators, she corrected. And spectators don't get to dictate the game. Something in Wendy's expression shifted. A line had been crossed, maybe not all the way, but close enough to feel the heat from it. "All right," Wendy said, her tone cooling. "Let's talk about another game. The tabloids, the blogs, the alleged feud with other women in the spotlight. People compare you to Catherine. They compare you to Diana. They compare you to other actresses, even other black women in the industry. Does that bother you?" Meghan laughed, not joyfully, but with a brittle sharpness. "It bothers me when people pretend those. Comparisons are harmless," she said. "They pit women against each other and call it entertainment. Catherine is the quiet doll on the balcony. I was never going to be that, so they needed to turn me into the villain to keep their story straight." The audience murmured louder now. Some clearly agreed, others did not. "You brought up Catherine," Wendy said carefully. "There are a lot of rumors about tension there. You said once that some stories were fabricated, but others you left hanging. If she were sitting in that chair instead of you, what do you think she'd say about all this?" Meghan's eyes flashed. "She wouldn't say anything," she snapped. "She'd smile, read from the script, and have a PR team clean it up afterward. That doesn't make her better. It makes her convenient." The word hung in the air. Wendy tilted her head. "Sounds like there's still some heat there," she observed. Meghan's voice dropped a pitch. "I'm not here to give you a catfight, Wendy," she said. "If people want women ripping each other apart, they can watch something else. I won't perform that for your ratings." Wendy's jaw tensed visibly now. "This isn't about ratings," she said slowly. "This is about honesty. And right now, I'm seeing a lot of blame, a lot of finger-pointing, and not much reflection." "Oh, I've reflected," Meghan shot back instantly. "I've reflected in therapy. I've reflected in private. But I don't owe the world a performance of self-flagellation, just to make them feel better about the role they played in my trauma." There was that word again. Trauma, dropped like a weapon in the middle of the studio. Wendy leaned back, studying her for a long moment. The audience was silent now, hanging on every breath. "Let's bring this closer to home," Wendy said finally, her voice lower, more serious. "You've talked a lot about being hurt, about being silenced, about being attacked. Do you ever worry you've started doing the same thing you accuse everyone else of? Silencing other people's perspectives by dismissing them as ignorant or malicious?" Meghan's eyes hardened, her composure fraying at the edges. "I'm not silencing anyone," she said. "They've had centuries to tell their version. I've had a few years. I think they'll survive." Wendy stared at her, the faintest hint of sadness behind the firmness in her eyes. "Okay," she said softly. "We're going to take another break." She turned to the camera. "When we come back, we're getting into Meghan's life now. The projects, the friends, the headlines, and the question a lot of people are asking. What does she actually want?" The band kicked in again, but it didn't lighten the room. As the cameras cut, Meghan leaned back, exhaling sharply, eyes flicking toward the crew like they were an annoyance. Wendy sat perfectly still, hands folded, breathing, through her nose. One of the stage managers whispered to another, "This is going to blow." He was wrong. It wasn't going to. It already had. And they still had 2 segments to go. The studio lights came back up slowly, but the warmth they cast couldn't thaw the frost that had settled over the set. The applause sign lit up, but this time fewer clapped. Even the audience sensed something had fundamentally shifted. Wendy inhaled through her nose, straightened her cards, and forced a polished smile. "And we are back with Meghan Markle," she announced. "Meghan, let's talk about where you are today." Meghan leaned forward, crossing her legs with exaggerated grace. "Perfect," she said. "Finally, something relevant." Wendy blinked, once, slowly. "All right," she replied evenly. "Let's start with something positive, your new project. There's a lot of chatter, documentary pitches, lifestyle brands, maybe even a political run. What's actually true?" Meghan lifted her chin. "Everything I touch becomes a conversation. That's influence, Wendy. Some people are born with it. Others make careers commenting on it." A murmur rippled across the audience. The temperature on set dropped another degree. Wendy's lips tightened for half a second. "So, the political rumors? Any truth to those?" Meghan gave a dismissive shrug. "If I wanted to run, I would win. That's all people need to know." Wendy paused. "That's a bold statement." "It's a realistic one," Meghan corrected sharply. "I know who I am. I know what I bring. People respond to strength." Wendy tilted her head. Some might call what you bring controversy. Meghan smirked. Only small minds confuse strength with controversy. That was it. A few members of the audience audibly said, "Wow." Wendy set her cards down, her fingers steepling on the desk in front of her, elbows planted firmly. The warmth in her eyes had faded completely. "Okay," Wendy said slowly. "Let's talk about the part people really want clarity on. Family, your husband, Prince Harry." Meghan's jaw twitched, but she kept her posture elegant. Wendy continued. "There are rumors, real rumors, that his temper has been growing. There are claims of arguments in public places, disagreements over work, over your public appearances. People are worried." "And," Meghan snapped. "And," Wendy repeated firmly. "I'm asking how you respond to that." Meghan scoffed loudly. "I respond by saying, people should mind their own business. My marriage isn't a democracy. I don't owe the public updates like I'm running a subscription service." The audience reacted again, this time a mix of surprise and discomfort. Wendy stayed calm. Some would say that when you sell documentaries, books, interviews, podcasts, you do invite questions. Meghan glared at her. "No, we invite curiosity, not entitlement." Wendy inhaled slowly, hands folded again. "All right," she said quietly. "What about your children? There have been reports." Meghan cut her off sharply. "And there it is. The line you people always cross. Don't talk about my children." Wendy's voice went still. "Meghan, I wasn't asking anything invasive. I was asking how you balance protecting them while living such a public life." Meghan leaned back, rolling her eyes dramatically. "You can dress it up however you want, Wendy. It's still intrusive." Wendy looked at her for a long moment. It was a reasonable question. "Reasonable to you," Meghan snapped, "not to anyone with actual awareness." The audience shifted in their seats. The tension had become suffocating. Wendy finally straightened her posture, placed both hands flat on the desk, and stared directly at Meghan. "Okay," she said. "Let me be very honest with you right now." Meghan's chin lifted defensively. "By all means," she said coldly. "You haven't exactly held back." Wendy nodded once, decisively. "You came here today," she said, "on a show watched by millions of people who wanted to hear from you, who wanted to understand you. And instead of answering questions, you've insulted the audience, dismissed every point, belittled everyone involved, and acted like being here is beneath you." Meghan's nostrils flared. "Because it is!" Gasps exploded from the audience. Wendy continued, her voice rising only a fraction. "You don't get to say that," she said firmly. "Not here, not on my show, not to the people who came for you, not to the women who supported you when you said you were hurting, not to the viewers who stayed up watching your story, believing in you." "Oh, spare me," Meghan sneered. "I'm not responsible for strangers projecting their fantasies onto me." Wendy stared at her, stunned for the first time. "That's how you see them?" she asked. "Not as supporters, not as fans, just people projecting fantasies?" Meghan smirked. "If the shoe fits." Wendy pressed her lips together, visibly containing herself. "Meghan," she said slowly, "I have hosted a lot of people, politicians, icons, A-list celebrities, athletes, activists, and yes, plenty of controversial figures. But never, not once, have I had a guest sit in that chair and show this level of contempt for everyone around them." Meghan shrugged. "Maybe they deserved it." That was the breaking point. Wendy exhaled sharply through her nose and snapped her cue cards in half with her hands. The audience gasped. "You know what?" she said, her voice suddenly cold and razor-sharp. "We are done." Meghan's eyes widened. "What do you mean, done?" "I mean," Wendy said, standing up from her chair, "this interview is over. We are not continuing this. Not for another minute." Meghan laughed. In disbelief. "Are you serious? You're ending your own show because you can't handle someone telling the truth?" Wendy pointed toward the stage exit. "No," she said firmly. "I'm ending this because you don't know how to talk to people without tearing them down." "Oh, please!" "You know what?" Wendy cut in sharply. "Save it. I'm not Oprah. I'm not Anderson Cooper. I'm not a palace aide who has to tolerate your tantrums. And this," she gestured to the set, the cameras, the stunned audience, "is not Buckingham Palace." The audience erupted, cheers, gasps, applause. Wendy leaned forward, her voice low but powerful. "You're not in the UK anymore. No titles here, no courtiers, no one bowing. You are not a duchess in this building. You are a guest. And you have forgotten that. Meghan's face flushed with fury. You can't talk to me like... Wendy raised a hand and shut her down instantly. Security, she said calmly. Please escort Meghan Markle off my set. The audience screamed, half in shock, half in delight. 2 stage managers and a security guard approached. Meghan rose to her feet, trembling with rage. This is outrageous, she hissed. You're going to regret this. Wendy didn't blink. Trust me, she replied. I won't. Meghan stormed off the stage, muttering under her breath, cameras catching every second. When she disappeared behind the curtain, Wendy turned back to the audience and the cameras. She smoothed her hair, inhaled deeply, and forced a composed smile. We'll be right back, she said, with a guest who actually wants to be here. The audience exploded into applause as the show cut to commercial. It would be replayed, debated, clipped, shared, and memed for months. The day Meghan Markle walked onto the Wendy Williams Show and got walked right off. And if you made it all the way to the end of this unbelievable showdown, you're officially part of the inner circle. So, do me a favor, hit that like button, smash subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another celebrity meltdown, backstage truth, or explosive interview breakdown.